USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to the USCHO Game of the Week podcast for Thursday, March 7th, 2019. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo, New York. Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. Well, it's playoff time for 4 of the 6 Division I conferences, and one of those is the Big Ten. Saturday night's game between Michigan and Minnesota is USCHO's Game of the Week.
We are joined now by the head coach of Michigan, and that is Mel Pearson. Mel, it's been a while since we talked. It was way back at the beginning of the season. At that time, things were going pretty well. I know there's been some ups, some downs, but it's now playoff time. Everybody gets to kind of start with that clean slate. Your feelings going into these playoffs in the Big Ten?
Well, we've been playing pretty well. If you look over the course of our last 6 games, we played real well against a good Ohio State team, won and tied, lost in the shootout in our building. And then obviously the weekend before that, it swept Michigan State. And then we sort of went into Wisconsin, sort of hit a little bit of a roadblock and lost 2 real tough games. 2 games we were in, lost in overtime in both games, and coulda, shoulda, woulda, won either one of those games. So I feel like our team is playing well. Just other than last weekend was a sort of a downer because all we needed was 2 points to get home ice, for the playoffs. And now we find ourselves coming to Minnesota here at Mariucci. But I like our team. I like where we're at. We just didn't get the results that last weekend that we were hoping for.
When I look at the last weekend, both games go to overtime. There have been so many overtime games for your club this year. I mean, almost a record-setting pace. I know that there's some negatives and positives, and the ability to take the best away from some of those games, and maybe not the same from others. But do you feel that prepares your team for the postseason, just getting to play in so many close games and being in so many tense situations, really from the get-go?
Well, good point, Jim, and I think it does. I mean, we've been in a lot of overtime games, and our last 3 games, as a matter of fact, have been overtime games. So we've been in those. It seems like we've been in playoff mode, really, for the last 2 months. So I think that helps prepare you for a lot of things, including being in tight games and where every play matters. Every shot's important. Every penalty kill becomes greater. So yeah, we've been in that situation for a while now. But again, like I said, the last 3 games we've been in overtime against Ohio State team is, I think, as good as any in the country, and then Wisconsin team was really coming on the road. So I think we're prepared for anything that we're going to go see going forward here at Minnesota.
We're talking with Mel Pearson, head coach at Michigan. You mentioned the team playing well, and that's sort of something that's been echoed from a lot of your colleagues across the league. 1 game separating 5 teams, 2nd to 6th place in the final regular season standings. What is it about the Big Ten this year? People have described it as everybody beating up on each other.
Well, it has. I mean, you see some interesting scores from week to week. Like Minnesota going down to Ohio State and sweeping them, and then them coming home and splitting with a team, and it's just there's no. It seems like there's no guarantee, and it seems like anybody in our league can. You might be able to say it across college hockey. Anybody can beat anybody on a given night. You have to make sure you're ready to play. But I think in the Big Ten is you have some great players on every team. And that's what makes it, I think, so exciting every night. And it's fun to play. It's hard on the coaches, but I mean, it's been great for the fans and the scoreboard watching right up until, that last game on Saturday night of the regular season to see who was going where. There's so many scenarios that could have happened. So I think that makes it good for hockey in general and for the fans. It's hard on the coaches, though.
You're going to be on the road this weekend, and I know you'd always rather be at home, but are there any any advantages that you can work out of being on the road? For example, getting away from campus and distractions.
Well, absolutely. And we're on spring break this week, so we got to focus on just hockey, not the academics. It was all hockey this week. And I thought that was really good for our team, and we've had good, productive practices. Our students are on spring break too, so I don't know what type of crowds we're going to get at home. So I don't know how much of a home ice advantage you get. Now, going on the road this weekend, you also get your team together. You're together. You're not split up, and once you leave the rink and everybody's all over the place. So you really get a chance to hunker down and focus at the task at hand, and that's being ready to play a good Minnesota team on Friday night.
You've seen Minnesota 4 times already this season. What do you expect to see from the Golden Gophers?
Well, first and foremost, the power play. They're operating almost 25%, one of the top teams in the country there, and that's what really did us in when we were here about a month ago. They scored 4 of their 6 goals on the power play. We won Friday night 4-2, and then lost a tough game the next night 4-3, in which they had 2 power play goals, and one was the game winner, the 4th goal to beat us 4-3. So they've got some dynamic forwards. They've got 4 or 5 really high-end forwards that really lead their team. Sheehy, Pedlick, Gates, Walker. I mean, they're good players, and they really, make it happen for them. And their goaltenders come around. Austin played extremely well. So we understand what we're up against, but I think the big thing is to stay on the ice, play them 5-on-5, and we can have success against them.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast. Minnesota and Michigan. They will play a best-of-3 quarterfinal series in the Big Ten. We're joined by Michigan head coach Mel Pearson. And Mel, I've always heard coaches say it. I've said it myself for a long time. When you get to the postseason, there's 3 keys that usually can impact a team. One is special teams, one is experience, and one is goaltending. And the experience one is the one I kind of want to point to, because your team last year went on that run in the playoffs and played so well down the stretch. You got to the Frozen Four. Is there anything that you can build on, take from those experiences that you had last year to bring them into this weekend, playing in a hostile environment? I remember you came out to the Northeast Regional and beat 2 teams in their backyards. You're going to have to do that again this weekend to survive.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. It's and we talked about that this week, how, we've been in tough situations. We went into a hostile environment last year, and we're still playing against Northeastern and BU, and Cornell was there. We called it the region of death or doom, and no one was giving us a chance, and rightfully so. We had a good year in the Big Ten, but not a great year, and we went in there and played basically road games against 2 really good teams and found a way to win. And we can do that. So I think knowing that you've been in this situation before, knowing that your season is on the line, if you don't come out with it, you're going home. We've been in those pressure situations, and I think for all the guys that we had. Now, having said that, we've got 10 freshmen that are here on this trip, so we've got a lot of new guys who haven't been there. But I think the biggest thing last year is the goaltending. I mean, Hayden Levine really stepped up and played well for us and carried our team. And I guess that's one of the things that, we have some concern about. We haven't had that guy step up and carry the team in the second half. So we're going to need goaltending on the road here to have success.
I always hear coaches talk and use the words road mentality, and I'm sure that's one thing going into Mariucci you'll have to have. What does that mean to you as a coach in bringing road mentality to a game like this?
Well, that we have to make sure that we do a few things, and first and foremost is being ready to play. We know they're going to come out and try to jump us, and we have to understand that, number one, you have to be prepared. Number 2, we need everybody, and we have to play smart. We have to play with discipline. We have to play fast, and we have to play together. And I think that's the biggest thing, is stick together and play together, regardless what happens. They're 10-8-2 at home, so it's not like we're coming into somewhere where they're 20-0 or 18-2. But you need goaltending. Your special teams have to be really good. You have to take advantage of the opportunities you get. You're not going to get as many on the road. And last, and maybe the most important, is you have to limit their scoring opportunities, especially with their high-end players. You have to make sure you take their time and space away. And those are going to be the keys. But again, the road mentality is you're not here to put on a show. We're not here to come in here and entertain these people. We're here to come in and win a hockey game on Friday night. And that's the bottom line.
Well, it should be a classic series between two legendary programs, Minnesota and Michigan. Mel Pearson, we appreciate you taking the time today, and best of luck this weekend. We hope we can be talking to you more down the road because of the success.
Awesome, guys. And it's going to be a great weekend of hockey here. And I know our team's excited to be here, and we're anxious to get going.
More of the Game of the Week podcast coming up next after this word from the NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
Speed and precision, unrelenting power. This trophy is not given, it must be earned. The 2019 NCAA Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
With a shot, saved by Morris. Takes the shot, Richter!
Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4 and get your tickets today.
Welcome back to the USCHO Game of the Week podcast. I'm Ed Trefzger with Jim Connelly. Jim, a couple of things from our conversation with Mel Pearson before we move on to some of the other big games. Two things stand out for me. One, how tight the Big Ten has been this year. And second, how key goaltending is going to be this weekend for the Wolverines. First, the tightness of the league. It's just everybody playing pretty solid hockey.
You know, I have talked about it throughout the season. There's been almost a cannibalization where these teams have beaten up on each other so bad in the Big Ten that, I guess if maybe you're a team like Notre Dame, you're playing the last place team in Michigan State, you're glad it's a 2 out of 3 series because the odds should be in your favor to be able to beat Michigan State in a 2 out of 3. But everybody else, it doesn't matter whether you're playing single game or 2 out of 3. I don't think that Minnesota or Penn State have massive advantages over Michigan and Wisconsin, respectfully. These are really good teams. All 6 of them are very good hockey teams that I would not want to face, and definitely in a single game. In a 2 out of 3, still, I don't think that Michigan or Wisconsin, the way that Wisconsin's going into the playoffs with 3 straight wins, I don't think any of those teams are going to be easy out. So I don't know if this weekend ended and we had Michigan State, and Wisconsin advancing on, and Ohio State, the team that's been on a bye, being the 4th team that's going to be in the semifinals next weekend, that wouldn't surprise me. On the other hand, I'm not surprised if the whole home teams are able to take advantage of that home ice advantage if it can be that sort of, edge to push them past into a few wins. But I don't know. There's also so many different things. We're going to be talking about playing playoff overtimes. There's been so many tied games in the Big Ten this year, and I felt like so many teams played for ties so that they could get into that bonus situation where they played 3-on-3, and then they maybe got into shootouts. All of those things are off the table now. We're playing 20-minute overtimes. This is big boy hockey, and I don't know how that alone might just affect how teams have to approach games, how teams play in the last minute of regulation, where desperation might lie. So it really all is so interesting to me. This is the one conference tournament that I look at this weekend that really draws my attention.
It's interesting. A 3-game series, you say, okay, well, you have a good chance of not being eliminated on the first night because obviously there's a second night. But one of the teams, it's single elimination on the second night. And if it goes to 3 games, it's single elimination for both teams. And the team that won on Saturday is bringing some momentum into Sunday. So best 2 out of 3 is a very exciting and unpredictable series format. The other thing we wanted to mention was goaltending. It's been split between Hayden Levine and Strauss Mann. Both have played 19 games this season, both with a save percentage sub 900 and a goals against at 3 or just slightly above is the average between the two of them. Coach Pearson mentioned goaltending being a key situation. Somebody's going to need to step up this weekend.
Yeah, and it's strange because you don't often see teams get to the playoffs where there really hasn't been a goaltender all season to take over the number 1 role, and that's been the case for Michigan, where you have 2 goaltenders. And we remember Hayden Levine really playing much better, and he had taken the reins really early in that season last year, and he was going to be the guy that was going to carry the water, and we knew it going into the tournament. If you're Mel Pearson, do you try to find some of that experience and tap into that and say go in there, or do you rely on a younger freshman and see what you can get out of another goaltender. I don't know what the formula is. We didn't ask him, and I don't think he would have told us if we did. And, that's what the kind of the nature of coaching. But I also look at, this team will not win unless they get good goaltending. They can score goals. We know they can score goals, but they're not going to win 5-4 games. They're going to be on the wrong side of a lot of those. They need to be in 2-1 and 3-1 games. Those are the types of games I imagine this Michigan team winning, and it starts with goaltending. The defense in front is really key as well, and you heard Mel talk about how he has a lot of freshmen in the lineup night in, night out. So a 5-man unit in front, they've got to be able to protect the goaltender, but at the same time, if you can limit the amount of power plays for Minnesota, you get the goaltending. I think Michigan could be the team, even though they're the lower seed, they could be the team with the advantage in the series.
Well, we'll talk more about playoffs in just a few moments, but first, 2 leagues are in their final weekends of play. In fact, Thursday night, just a little bit after we're recording this, BC is at Providence.
A big series or a big single game for both of those teams. BC, they're trying to get themselves some momentum going into the playoffs. Providence, they're trying to really know that they could be the number 2 seed, lock down that number 2 seed. I think they would try to feel like that's an advantage, and that's kind of what's on the line there. Neither of those really are in a situation where home ice is too much in play. But I think that Providence, wants to be heading into the playoffs on the right note. They've had some very good games. They've been the better team. They should be the better team than Boston College. But BC, they've been streaky at times, especially of late, where they've played some good hockey. They have not played the way that, that way all season. But I think that, that's one of those matchups that interest me. I think I had to pick that game in my hockey's picks. I picked Providence, but I don't stand by that pick too strongly because it's just one of those that you feel that either one of those teams could easily pull that game off.
Things have to fall the right way for BU to get into the top 4. They don't play till Saturday. It may be decided by then, right?
It could be, depending on the results I guess it's for both Northeastern and UMass Lowell. BU might not even have a chance at home ice any longer. Lowell, they're up at Vermont. I mean, that's the Vermont team that has struggled, but has a very good goaltender. And if they, pull off a big upset, they could play a role of spoiler. That's big for them. BU, they go to Maine, which is not the easiest road trip. They split earlier with Maine in the season, and Maine has been playing some good hockey down the stretch. Outside of a bad, I think it was a 6-0 loss last weekend to UMass, but any team has been exposed by UMass, it seems, this year. So I think that, BU has a long road to get that home ice spot. It's one that they'd like to get, but talking to Albie O'Connell this week, he said, just get me to the playoffs. I really don't care home road, just get me to the playoffs, and then we'll work from there. He knows that there are advantages of having your own training room and having your own beds to sleep in and having your own locker room, but he also knows that his team has dug themselves a little bit of a hole. He just wants to get into the playoffs and playing good hockey.
When we turn to the NCHC final weekend there, the premier matchup, 2 games at St. Cloud, Minnesota Duluth visiting.
Yeah, and things are locked down in terms of a title, but Minnesota Duluth would obviously like to play some good hockey, and this would be an opportunity to maybe, pull one away and lock up that number 2 seed in the conference. They're not as close in terms of points, all these teams. I think it's 4 points from second to third, 4 points from third to fourth, 4 points from fourth to fifth. So there's still things to be decided in a 3-point per win league. But, there's a lot to be said for momentum and a lot to be said for pairwise, really, when you're looking at teams like Minnesota Duluth in a game against St. Cloud State. As far as I can tell, St. Cloud State has likely locked up the number 1 overall seed unless they were really tank here and maybe lose 4 straight. I think they're the number 1 overall seed. They're not going to drop out of a number 1 seed. So there's not too much pairwise for them to play for, but Duluth is trying to solidify their position near the top of the pairwise, and they could use a win, if not 2 wins, against St. Cloud this weekend.
Well, unless there are some upsets this weekend, the series we're going to see with Colorado College at Denver for a pair is a preview of next weekend in the first round of the playoffs.
It's so crazy. They played not too long ago. They played that makeup game about a week and a half ago. So they could end up playing as many as 6 games within a span of less than 21 days. If my math is right, maybe it's a couple more than that, but it's not much. And that's kind of crazy for 2 rivals to get to play each other in the playoffs after finishing the series, playing one another in the final weekend, after having a game not too long ago. I mean, that's a lot of hockey. That's a lot of times for these 2 teams to face one another. And you can only imagine whoever the officials are that get that series are just be, taking a deep breath saying, oh boy, here we go. This is going to be one of those series where you're going to get some, a little bit of animosity between the two teams. They'll be too familiar by that point. And then at that point, there's going to be advancement on the tournament going on the line. So for Denver and CC, if they do end up playing in the playoffs, that could be a mini bloodbath waiting to boil over.
And CC is playing some great hockey right now.
They really are. They are. They're. We've talked about it. Sometimes their offense explodes, and when they do, they are one of the more dangerous teams in the NCHC. So it's almost a trap weekend this weekend for Denver. And if they do end up facing CC, it becomes a trap series against Colorado College.
Well, let's stay out west and go to playoffs. We talked about Michigan at Minnesota. The other two matchups in the Big Ten, Michigan State has a pair at Notre Dame, Wisconsin a pair at Penn State. I would not be surprised to see both of these series go 3 games.
No, I mean, any of them. There's none that I feel really confident that the home team should just easily walk over. And at the same time, I don't feel that the visiting team is out of any of these series. So, I think that can Michigan State win a game at Notre Dame? I think that they can. I think that Notre Dame probably has the biggest advantage, but, this is still a league where 7 points separated second place to 7th place. So second to last, we're all separated by less than 3 games. So I don't feel like any one team is better than the other. It's just who's going to play the best hockey. And when you have game difference making players like a Tiro Hirose at Michigan State, you never know what he can do in a single weekend against a team like Notre Dame. Motivation for some of these playoffs is often postseason, and can the biggest names play the biggest games on the biggest stage? In the
WCHA, all 8 qualifying teams are in action in playoff series. The ones that really stand out to me are the ones that are closest in the seeding, and that's Bemidji at Lake Superior State and Michigan Tech at Bowling Green.
Yeah, I don't mean disrespect to either Alaska or Alabama Huntsville. They've each won some good games, but I don't see them really standing up well. Alaska against Northern Michigan or UAH against Minnesota State. But Bowling Green hosting Michigan Tech and Lake Superior hosting Bemidji, those are some battles. And I wouldn't be surprised if both of those win 3 games. But, at the same time, I think that, both Bowling Green and Lake Superior are excellent hockey teams. Can they prove it when it's on the line in the playoff situation? We know that Michigan Tech has been in a number of championship games over the last few years in the WCHA, and Bemidji has been one of the most competitive playoff teams the last few years. So, Lake State, this is going to be kind of a first for them. They're going to be the favorite. They're going to be the host. This is not something they've done a long time. And Bowling Green, same thing. They've been a decent team, but they haven't been the favorite too often. So both of these teams wearing kind of the different jerseys, these ones have a target on their back.
Both of those teams, though, Lake State was swept by Northern Michigan. Bowling Green had a stumble last Friday against UAH, so they're not invulnerable.
No, not at all. And that I think is what makes this playoffs the most interesting.
Let's go to Atlantic hockey. 3 playoff series this weekend, the bottom 6 teams in the standings. And it's interesting that every one of these has a little bit of a story. Army West Point at Mercyhurst. Brian Riley, head coach at Army. His son Brandon plays for Mercyhurst. Canisius and Niagara, arch rivals. They have the Battle of the Bridge series every year. And this is going to be the 3rd straight year that Holy Cross faces Robert Morris in the Atlantic hockey playoffs.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at these matchups and thinking, boy, there's something on the line. These are not just inconsequential. And the one that kind of stands out, I know the Riley Mercyhurst rivalry has been alive for a number of years with a couple of sons for Brian going through Mercyhurst. But, Canisius and Niagara, that has been a team. There have been 2 teams going back to the original days of the MAC in College Hockey America. And, those were battles. And, it always felt that Canisius found a way to come out on top of Niagara. Back in the days when Blaze McDonald and Brian Cavanaugh were the coaches. Now we've got 2 very different coaches behind both of those benches. Niagara, they should be a favorite, but Canisius, they seem to fight tooth and nail right down in the last couple of weeks. So they're coming in playing decent hockey. That will not be a typical 6th place against last place series.
And then the last league with playoffs going on for us to mention is ECAC Hockey. Princeton's at Brown, St. Lawrence at Dartmouth, Colgate at Union, and Rensselaer at Yale. if Union and Yale are playing, then you know that you're going to have multiple overtimes in one of those games. But again, this is a situation where you can expect some 3-game series in most, if not all of them.
Yeah, and some special things to note. Obviously, Dartmouth being able to host a playoff series. Brown, it's been a very long time since Brown has been able to host a playoff series. I think that there are a couple of teams in there. St. Lawrence really stands out as one that I don't give a lot of chance to. They did not play well down the stretch. Only 5 wins all year, and only 1 road win for them the entire season. So that's one that kind of stands out. Obviously, Yale and Union, you mentioned it. It feels like there's always some overtime involved in those, and RPI gets into a series. I've seen that team play well at times this year. I saw Colgate a couple of times when I was calling games for UMass Lowell, and neither of those games did I feel like Colgate was outmatched. I felt like they were a pretty good team, and they have a very good top line. So there's something to be said. And then you get Princeton in there, a team that most people were picking to win the ECAC at the beginning of the season. They were at least in most people's top 3. So there's a lot to be played for this weekend, even though it is the 5 through 12 series. There's still a lot of teams that, A, want to try to keep some breath alive, and B, there's some that just feel like they might have a chip on their shoulder. They didn't play as well in the regular season. Princeton stands out for that, RPI maybe as well, and they want to be able to do something in the postseason.
Well, we've seen teams that have stumbled in the ECAC playoff make it into the national tournament. And the one that really comes to mind is Yale. They were the last team in. They lost in the semifinals and lost when they used to have a consolation and won the national championship this year. So it is, like we said with Mel Pearson, a brand new season. You can wipe the slate clean and see where you can go.
I think that's what coaches enjoy. That's why they want to get to the postseason. And there's 5 teams eliminated, obviously, with the WCHA and Hockey East knocking teams off. But for everybody else, it's 0-0 and 0. And you know that you just have to win to stay alive, win in advance. That's the old expression that they've been using in NCAA basketball for years. And it applies to hockey as well. Win in advance. That's all coaches are trying to do at this time of year.
Well, enjoy the hockey this weekend. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.